So if you've been around homeschooling blogs or Facebook groups or anything like that for any length of time, you've probably heard the term nature study and you may be familiar with it. But a lot of times we hear nature study referenced with our younger students, taking your younger kids outside and introducing them to nature and doing nature studies. But does it stop with elementary school? Absolutely not. You can definitely continue nature study through middle school and high school. But how do we keep nature study feeling cool for those older students? Hey guys, and welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. If it's your first time here, welcome to my channel. My name's Abby and I'm a homeschooling mom of 2 high schoolers. And today I want to talk about nature study with the older students, particularly middle school and high school age students. So nature study is simply getting your kids outdoors and observing and studying nature. And when they're younger, we might do that naturally. We take them out to parks to help them burn some energy. We take them for walks and we start to look at things. And then as our kids get older, sometimes it becomes a little more of a struggle to encourage them to get outdoors and exploring nature. Now, our family in particular, we love being outdoors. We will find any excuse we can to get out and hike or go to a garden or go to a park. We love taking family trips that involve being out in state and national parks. We do a lot of camping and things like that. But that didn't come naturally. We had to, as parents, we had to make a effort to get our kids out there and to give them these experiences. We had to make sure that, we were learning right along with them about these different things. It even was the encouragement for me to really take a refocus on my health a few years ago to make sure that I was physically able to keep up with my teenagers as we started to do some more advanced exploring. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go all in. You don't have to go and buy camping equipment and a whole bunch of advanced study equipment or anything like that to do nature study with your middle school and high schoolers. But there are just a lot of benefits to continuing nature study or even starting nature study off with your older students. When you think about it physically, one, anytime we can get outdoors, we are getting active, right? And that's important with our older kids. They kind of naturally will start to want to, be online more and texting with friends more, or maybe they're into video games. And we know that increased screen time is negative for their health, right? So we want to get them outside. We want to get them active. 2, we want to get them appreciating all that God has given us. I mean, we have a gorgeous planet. There is so much to see. And you don't have to go to a big national park like Yellowstone or something like that to see these things. There's a lot of great beauty right in your own yard. You can go out into your own backyard and do some amazing observations. You can go to local parks and see amazing observations. Maybe you have a friend or a neighbor who has a farm or a really cool garden and you can ask if you can go and explore that. There's so much to see and appreciate, and it's much easier to appreciate it if you're there in person, seeing it in action. For mental health, being outdoors also has a lot of benefits. You're getting the increased sunshine, and there have been lots of studies that have shown that the more you are outdoors, the more benefits you will see as far as decreasing depression, decreasing anxiety, and you can actually alter your brain chemistry to help you be a happier, healthier person by increasing your time outside in nature. So knowing all of these benefits of nature study, how do we incorporate it with our older students and how do we keep it interesting for them? Well, you don't necessarily have to make it a formal thing in your family. I mean, we did have it as a part of our group work, a formal part of our group work all the way up through last year. And that's when my daughter was a freshman and my son was an 8th grader. So especially through middle school, we kept it as part of our group study. And then last year, and now it is more incorporated into the courses that we do. We are studying biology with my son. And so naturally getting outside and observing some of the things he's studying has become a part of that course. We've done pond studies. We've gone out and done plant studies. My daughter, for her botany course, does a lot of stuff outside, and she's really hands-on with our garden work this year. And I count that as ongoing nature study. We also can keep it informal by incorporating it into things like our family hikes. We had a beautiful day this past weekend. We went out and we did some hiking, and it was really great because the observation skills that we had been focusing on when my daughter was younger were things that naturally came out during the hike, pointing out things that we were seeing and observing and utilizing some of the stuff I'm going to talk about just as a part of that casual family hike. So yes, you could make it kind of a formal part of your curriculum. Maybe one day a week you set aside, and that's the day your family is going to go out and do nature study. Although if that's what you're going to do, I would encourage you to be flexible with it, because depending on weather, you may say, okay, well, today it's pouring down thunderstorms. We're not going to go outside today. What are we going to do instead? Or if you're looking at winter months, if you have really harsh winters, maybe you want to find a way to do nature study, but be able to do it while still indoors. And that's totally possible to do as well. If you have a high school student and you're interested in assigning some sort of credit for it, you could actually create like a nature studies course, maybe as an elective. I remember taking an elective that was all about Indiana natural history, and that it involved a lot of hiking outdoors and studying different things about Indiana and Indiana native plants. So it did tree studies and plant studies and hikes that then allowed me to go out and actually observe those things. So you could certainly create an elective course for a high schooler if you wanted to. So getting started with nature study can be as simple as having something for your student to record observations in, and perhaps having a few basic art tools around for them to use. We have used a couple of different things over the years. We have had different size notebooks that we've used. So for example, I have this one from Arteza, and this is heavyweight spiral bound paper. It's good for watercolor. So technically it is watercolor paper, if it will focus there. So we've used smaller books like this. We have used bigger ones. I found these on clearance at Barnes & Noble a couple of years ago. So I just had picked up a whole bunch of them, all different kinds of designs. I do prefer spiral bound notebooks for nature study. Reason why is because it's a little bit easier to use when you're actually going out. So if you think about it, your student can simply flip to the page they're doing, set it on their lap, and be able to take their notes or do their sketches. We have also gotten some that are more like actual bound books. And again, I think I picked these up here. We picked these up on clearance, I think at like a Michael's or Joann's, and just got a whole bunch of them. And it's just a bunch of blank pages inside. So you don't need anything in particular or fancy as far as what you're going to record in, but I do encourage you to have some sort of a notebook for your student to be documenting in. Now, you might decide to just go out with this and some pencils, and that's totally fine. Just encouraging your student to take some basic sketches and some basic notes. And then if you want to come back into the home and be able to do some more extensive sketching or drawing, you could definitely incorporate that. Particularly if you have a student who is really inclined to doing art type projects, or maybe needs the encouragement towards doing art type projects. We have a couple of things that we used a lot with this. I have watercolor sets, and I'll just show up here which ones we have. I have watercolor sets, I have a big colored pencil set, and then I have these like Inktense pencils, which are like they go on like a color pencil, but then you can wet it down and it becomes kind of like a watercolor. So we've used all of those in our nature studies. Typically what we have found was it was easier for us to go out and take notes and basic sketches, maybe take a couple of pictures of things we were seeing. And then if we wanted to, we could come back and we could do some more intense coloring and drawing at the home from there. Maybe you've picked a day to go out and do a nature study, you know where you're going, you've got some notebooks, you got some pencils, you get out there with your students and you say, go study nature. And they look at you and they go, what am I supposed to do? The kids naturally want some sort of direction, right, on what it is they're supposed to do. Otherwise, it can get kind of a bit overwhelming. Am I supposed to be looking at flowers? Am I supposed to look at leaves? Am I supposed to look at the ground? What am I supposed to do, Mom? So giving them some direction can be helpful. I taught my kids kind of the 3 basics of nature study, which means go and find one thing that captures your interest. It can be a flower, it can be a tree, it can be a leaf, and ask yourself 3 questions. Well, or 3 types of observations. First of all, say, what is it that I notice? So look at that item and ask yourself, what do I notice about it? And I started off by giving them just a short assignment. I'd say, write down 5 things you notice about it. Size, color, shape. Is it moving? Does it feel soft? Does it feel rough? Just give me 5 observations. And then maybe the next time we went out, I said, okay, let's try to do 6 things that you notice. And what it does is it teaches them to start looking beyond the obvious of that object that they're looking at. You know, initially, yeah, your kids might record things that are pretty basic, like the color and the general shape. But as they start to do more observations, they will look more in depth and they will start to notice other things. You know, for example, I pulled out a page here that was done one year, and you'll see up here, this is all the eye notices on here. So it was things like petals curve outwards, leaves are long and look waxy, petal edges are darker orange near the middle, and there are specks of yellow. 4 larger petals, 1 skinny, 1 very straight petal, 1 skinny curved petal. Flowers on the plant are all clumped together. Some flowers haven't opened yet. Bees are active on it. All things that were noticed. So you notice it kind of went beyond just the basics there. A lot of things on the eye notice. So eye notice is the first thing that I had them do. The second thing I had them do was called It Reminds Me Of. So this is starting to create kind of connections between things. Does it remind you of another thing you've seen in nature? Does it remind you of something outside of nature? Does it remind you of a particular feeling or experience? So trying to find a few things that it reminds you of. So for the same page, those observations were that this plant reminds me of fire, lilacs that grow in our yard, looks like an orchid. The curls on the leaf look like cups. The monster in the Return of the Jedi that comes out of the sand. So again, creating connections in your mind. What does that thing that you're seeing of nature then remind you of? And then the last part was, what do you wonder? So writing I wonder and a couple of things. So these would be questions you'd ask yourself that you could later go and find out. You know, what is it you wonder about that thing you're observing in nature that you'd like to know the answer to? So for this one, the I wonders was, is this a bulb plant? Is this plant a good pollen source? Is it related to lilacs? Since it reminds me of lilacs, right? How long will this plant bloom? Why are the leaves so big? And why are the leaves curled in? So for this one flower observation, so we did a sketch of the flower, sketch of the leaves. We had all of these I noticed, it reminds me of, and I wonder questions. And that was the one thing that we had my student focus on that day. And so each time we went out, that was what it was. Hone in on just one thing that kind of catches your eye and ask yourself those 3 basics. Write down those 3 basics. Okay. I wonder, I notice, it reminds me of, and I wonder. And that gives you a great starting point. You can also incorporate things like doing measurements if you'd like. Take out a couple of rulers with you, or, you know, just like a regular like sewing tape measure. You can take measurements of things, how tall they are, how wide they are. You can make sketches of things around it. For example, you know, we had noticed the bees on the plant on this particular day. So we actually turned around and then started doing some research into kind of bees and pollination. It was kind of just a stepping off point into that topic. But this just gives your students some basic direction to start with, which can be really helpful, especially with older students, so they don't get kind of overwhelmed or end up kind of looking back at you and saying, well, I didn't know what to do. So this gives them something to look at. Now, you could, of course, do topical studies in your nature study. Maybe you are studying a particular kind of plant. Maybe you're looking at, let's just say fungi. Let's say you're doing biology and you're on fungi. So when you go out and do your nature study, that's your focus. You're telling your student, hey, I want you to go out. I want you to specifically look for mushrooms and different types of fungi and have that be the thing that you're going to focus on in your nature study today. Maybe you're studying pollinators. So, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to look specifically for butterflies and bees or other pollinators and study those. Trees. Okay, you're going to go out, you're going to find a tree that is really interesting to you, and we're going to focus in on that. So you could, of course, give your students some kind of focus study. You could also focus it based on where you're going on a particular day. For example, when we went we went on a hiking trail that took us to a pond, I pulled out pond study materials and I said, okay, we're going to focus all of our observations on things around and in the pond. So that's either going to be something you see swimming in the pond or nearby the pond, or a plant you see either in the pond or growing next to the pond. So you can give them some more specific direction in that regards if you wanted to, or you could just go out and say, hey, find one thing that just draws your interest. So if you've gone out and you've done some observations and you're coming back and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I take what they have been seeing out of nature and make it more of a learning experience? I mean, we obviously want to go kind of beyond the observation, right? We want them to find out more about what it is that they're seeing. So there are a lot of really great resources you can use. I mean, yes, you can get online and you can look things up that way. You can check out YouTube videos about things. I'm a big book person. I mean, I have lots of books. That's one of 5 bookcases in our house. I have a couple books that are kind of portable that I've picked up over the years. For example, I have this little book guide on trees, and then I have one here that's the Trees of Indiana, a field guide. You could pick up little books like this about flowers and trees. These are great to be able to just toss in your bag and take while you're out doing nature studies, because it is really nice for being able to identify things as you're looking at them. So they give you information on like what the bark should look like, what the leaves will look like, to be able to help you with tree identification, which tree identification has always been a struggle for me. Like I can see a tree 10 times and I still have to kind of look it up to be able to identify it. So these little pocket guides are just really great little resources to have. I also am a big fan of DK books, which DK books, you might go, well, those are kind of like little kiddish, right? Maybe they were originally designed for smaller kids, but there's a lot of really great information in them and a lot of cool reference information. So we've obviously still have on hand trees, leaves, flowers, and seeds, because my daughter uses this for botany. But I mean, the book has amazing illustrations and lots of good information around them. So just because a book is heavy on the pictures and illustrations, don't discount that as a resource for your middle school and high schoolers. In fact, this might be more engaging for them. It really does help with identifying things. I've always felt like when there's a picture I can reference, I can identify things quicker and I can learn more from it. So DK books are really great. We've had a lot of them over the years. One's on plants, one's on woodlands. We had one on rocks and geodes, which we actually have currently loaned out to another family. I also have this one, The Wonders of Nature. Now this one is a little less of one we use for identifying, but it is one that has some really cool illustrations and paintings in it and information on different types of plants. This was a really nice book to use during kind of the winter months when it was a little bit harder for us to get outside for nature studies, but we still wanted to do some study of different things. So this is just a beautiful, beautiful book to use. Another resource that I really liked came from the website Raising Up Wild Things. Now, this is a small business and she creates some beautiful PDF downloads of different types of nature journals. Now, when you look at it initially, you might think that these, again, are geared more for younger kids, but we actually used these in middle school and early high school and had a lot of fun with them, and they were just really great resources for us. This would be a really good tool as well if you have students of multiple ages and you want to try to get them involved in nature study in different ways. So she has all different kinds of themed nature study programs. There are ones for the seasons, so you can get a spring study, summer, fall, winter. She has ones on pond studies. She has ones specifically for pollinators. We did the one on rocks and geodes. So I just pulled a couple of things out. What I did is when I purchased these, I would print them out and I would put them in like a 3-ring binder. I put them in like plastic page protectors simply because I'm kind of rough on my notebooks and I didn't want pages to rip. You could do it however you want. You could print off as little or as much of these different things as you want and make copies. But I just pulled out a couple just to show you some examples. So this is the cover page for her spring notebook here. And there are all kinds of things that are included in here. So she'll have information like on butterflies and caterpillars, the life cycle of them. So if you were going out and looking for them, you could look for like what stage that butterfly is in or which stage the chrysalis is in. All of her packets will include add-on activities. So if you want to do experiments or hands-on activities, if you want to kind of go further in studies, that will be included in here. So she's got information in there. She's got blank journaling pages. So if you don't have a spiral bound book and you wanted to print these off and have your kids do observations, you could do that. There's blooms. What makes a blossom? Different parts of a plant. So when you are doing that observation, maybe going further and actually identifying the different parts of the plant. It includes birds, bird anatomy, egg identification, nests, nest size and shapes, more journaling pages, different types of animals. It's about 25 pages just for the spring packet. And there are ones for each of the different seasons. We've also pulled them out at different times. So by having them all printed out in one place, I could kind of go through and reference things as we came upon them. So maybe we were focusing on the spring packet during the spring season, but we happened to do a day where we were out in the garden and we were, we noticed some bugs, right? So I go into my garden pages and I pulled out the page on garden pests, and we used this for identification of what it was we were seeing. Or if we're doing a pond study day, I might pull out that. So you could really utilize her resources in multiple ways. You could say, okay, we're going to do like this whole packet. We're going to focus for, however many weeks on this. Or you could say, hey, we've got all of this as kind of reference material. And as we come across different things, we're going to pull out those pages that are pertinent to it. Another thing that she included that I really liked is she has what are called these phenology wheels. So they look like this. And this is great if you want to encourage daily observations. So you could print out one of these per month. The idea is that in the smaller circles, you're putting like the moon phases, and then within like the pieces of the pie, something that reminds you of the day. So maybe you're tracking the weather day by day. Maybe you're observing something in particular, like a particular plant, and you're drawing it there. This would be great if it's spring, if you're growing seeds, you could look and like draw what it looks like each day. And then she gives an example here. So you can see kind of what someone did as far as tracking things. So you could utilize those in different ways. There are ones for like star observations and space observations too. She also has all of these great resource pages that will be in all of her packets, kind of like a going further. So for example, for honeybees, she has a list here of online experiments, activities, how to make beeswax candles, how to make a honeycomb cake, a video, why do bees love hexagons, books you could look at, places you can go and you can purchase things. So she has a ton of extra resources on there. So if your student is really interested in something that they're studying in nature, you could kind of go further with it. One of our favorite ones that we did during the winter months is we did her rocks and minerals course. I really loved this because we in Indiana, we have kind of like garbage winters. If you live in Indiana, it gets cold, like really, really cold. And then we either have a ton of snow or we get like freezing rain, and it's just kind of, it's always like, it's miserable and wet. We have miserable, wet winters. But I still want us to study nature, right? And unless it's a fairly decent day and we can actually go outside, we wanted to find something we could do in the home. So rocks and minerals kind of became our winter study. We did this most of last year. I went on Amazon and I bought a couple of like geode kits or rock kits, and I'll link the ones that I purchased down below. And this was really nice because as we were studying these things, they could actually like pull one out that looked interesting to them on that day. They looked up in the resource material. We used the DK book on rocks and geodes for extra information, plus the stuff from Raising Up Wild Things. And we wrote about those in our pages. So she actually included in there, she's got really great illustrations of the different types of rocks, which helped us be able to kind of identify the things in our rock kits. There also were experiments that we could do. For example, this one, creating edible rocks. We had ones looking at rock formation and rock pressure, and they were just simple hands-on activities that used basic things around the home. We didn't have to go out and buy anything crazy or special, but it was just like a nice way to illustrate stuff for them. And just to give you an idea on kind of what we did in our nature journaling pages from there. So for example, we would copy information like this is about rock formation. We just put some information in our binders from there. picking a particular rock that you wanted to study on a given day, drawing it and writing out information about it as well. So just some examples of what we did in the notebooks for there. Yes, I did journal right alongside my kids. So they had their journals, which I've been showing you, and then I kept one as well because I wanted to cultivate my own love for nature right alongside of them. So to kind of summarize, nature study with your older students has a lot of benefits. Physically, mentally, it also will help them start to make connections with these science subjects that they are studying in middle school and high school, being able to actually observe things in action and out in nature. It does not have to be hard to get started. It can be something as simple as having a notebook and a pencil and going out and remembering to ask yourself those 3 questions. What is it I notice? What does something remind me of? And what is it I wonder about it? And then you can take that study as far as you want to. If you want to come back and incorporate artwork into it, you can. If you want to pull out resource information and look up more about something, you totally can. Or if you simply just want to go out and enjoy nature and look at things and talk about it as a family, you can do that as well. So regardless of how in-depth you decide to get with your nature study, just get out there and start enjoying this beautiful world God has given us. Hopefully the information that I've shared today makes you feel a little more comfortable with either continuing nature study with your middle school and high school students or introducing it for the first time with them. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below to my channel so you can be notified when I post new content. If you have any favorite resources with regards to nature study, we would love to hear about them down below in the comments, so please be sure to share. Any books and materials I mentioned today, I will go ahead and I will link down below for you. I will also link Raising Up Wild Things website if you'd like to check out all of her really great resources that she has for nature study. Thanks so much for joining me for today's video, everybody. Happy homeschooling.